When I moved to the House of Lords, I couldn't believe how nice everybody is, how pleasant they are.
If somebody in the House of Commons is rude, then the next person who speaks is even ruder. If somebody in the House of Lords is rude, they go, "Oh, I'm so terribly sorry. I do want to withdraw that."
Tony Blair was somehow the archetype of cool Britannia. I mean, go figure. How batshit. How batshit were the 1990s, hey? Hello and welcome to Electoral Dysfunction from Sky News with me, Beth Rigby.
Me, Ruth Davidson.
And me, Harriet Harman.
Now, the burner phone has been vibrating in my pocket. I don't know why I said the pocket bit.
You just do that on purpose, don't you?
Yeah.
You toss those balls up there, you're just waiting for someone to hit them, aren't you?
I was just looking at you going, ah.
I know you were, because you know it's always me that bites.
I know. Because this is our Easter Q&A special. But before we get going, can we just remind everyone that if they have a tiny gap in their calendars on Tuesday, the 20th of May, that's Tuesday, the 20th of May.
Sorry, what date, Beth?
It's
I didn't hear you there.
Tuesday, the 20th of May. We'd really love them to have a night out with us.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please, Electoral Dysfunction Live is back! Or should that be Electoral Dysfunction's Big Night Out? It is Tuesday, May the 20th at the Cadogan Hall in London. And all you need to know is in our show notes. So do have a look at that and we will hopefully see you there.
And I could do the big night out. So I'm there for it. Well, obviously I'm there for it.
Cadogan Hall's licensed, right? Because I'm going to need a gin.
Yeah, we're going to have a gin.
Well, the last lives, we had some great special guests.
And also, what else is anyone doing on a Tuesday night on the 20th of May? Nothing. They do nothing. Come on.
I know Tuesday nights you want to curl up on your sofa and watch crap telly.
No, you don't.
But it's so much better to come out, to be live in the audience. You can ask us a question. You can win an Electoral Dysfunction mug.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean, I'm saying that as if we have any. I don't know if we've got any, but I'm sure we will. I'm sure we'll get some merch.
I love the live shows because it just showed me what premium listeners we've got.
They were polite. They were well dressed.
They were funny. They were well informed.
They were
creme
premium
de la
people.
creme. They were.
Yeah, yep. The creme de la creme of podcast listeners.
Sorry, my door's going. I'll just ignore
That'll
that.
That'll be people queuing up at your door for a ticket. But we're not doing a live show today. We're doing a Q&A today. Now, remember, you can always send us your questions, your thoughts, your photos, anything you want, within reason, on the WhatsApp or voice note us on the burner phone. And it's 07934 200 444, or email us at electoraldysfunction@sky.uk. Okay, let's go. I've got the first question. Okay. This is from Sue. She's got a question for you two baronesses.
Oh, okay.
She says, I love hearing about life as a working politician. I find it fascinating, but I know nothing, in caps locks that is, about life in the House of Lords. Can you do a deep dive on this with your baronesses? How often do you go in? Are you paid? Are you required to go in for so many days a year? Is it televised? Why is Ruth a baroness, not a lady? And is it ever fun? Who's going to go first?
Harriet, you go first.
Gosh, where to start? Well, the thing about the House of Lords is that, and we've been talking a lot about the lack of checks and balances in America with Trump just being able to do everything he wants without any scrutiny or any accountability. And we've got accountability in two ways. We've got accountability in the premier house, if you like, is the House of Commons, because it's got the legitimacy of being elected. But so that we don't just have one set of people looking at government legislation and holding the government to account, we've got a second chamber, which is the House of Lords. And we don't have constituencies, obviously. We are appointed. But the idea is that you don't bring the representation of your constituents, but what you bring is some sort of expertise, some sort of experience, some sort of wisdom, and that this is the second chamber. And what we do is we are the revising chamber. The House of Commons will always get their way and make the decisions in the end, but the House of Lords take a second look at things just to make sure that things are in order and to ask questions that might not have been asked in the House of Commons. And it's what I call post-ambition politics, because people are very political but they're not actually going anywhere politically. They might have been somewhere politically, but they're certainly not going anywhere. And
You just
therefore it's
called us
got a
all
very
has-beens. You know that, right? I mean, you
yeah,
called us
yeah.
has-beens in the most
But there's
polite
something
way. I
very
don't disagree with you.
relaxing. I mean, I wouldn't knock being a has-been. There's something very relaxing about being a has-been. But it's quite curious because because it's post-ambition politics, people are not stabbing you in the back the whole time because you're not an obstacle to their rise up the ranks. They don't have to be pushing you out the way. And everybody's very pleasant and courteous to each other in a quite alarming and chilling way. I found when I found a group of people being very courteous and friendly to me, and I discovered to my horror that actually it was 14 members of Thatcher's cabinet sitting on the front row of the bench in the House of Lords. I go in about 2 days a week, sometimes 3, but it's kind of voluntary. You go in when you choose to go in. It is televised. And it's got a very different atmosphere. It's nothing like Prime Minister's questions. But apparently people like watching it in America. Imagine they like watching the House of Lords on
I can
television in America. I don't understand the Americans for many reasons. That is certainly one of them.
And it's fancy. Like the chamber is fancy. There's lots of like carved things in it. Unlike the speaker's chair, we've got thrones in there. Now nobody sits in them because they're for when the now king, but before that the queen does the king or the queen's speech. And their consort sits next to them, and then there's a woolsack in front of that, which is kind of like a pouffe, like a long low pouffe, which is what the speaker sits on. And the speaker's role in the Lords is different to the Commons. So we're sort of, in a weird way, we're sort of like a self-identifying chamber in terms of you take it in turns for who asks, whether it's the government side, the opposition side, and the Liberal Democrats, or the crossbenchers. So they're people with no political affiliation
Yeah.
who are in there because they're experts in their field. And the speaker only kind of says, right, okay, that's your time up on this question. We're going to move to the next question. The first person to this. And then it almost kind of guides itself. So when I moved to the House of Lords, I couldn't believe how nice everybody is. I mean, they're just like, in terms of how pleasant they are, how not just how congenial, but the pleasantries within the way in which you address people in other parties, and it's not contentious. You also, when you join, you have to say, you kind of physically say that you're going to do what you think is right, and that you're not just going to be blind to the whip of your own party, which is something that you don't necessarily say in the Commons, I don't believe. You certainly don't say it in Holyrood.
If somebody in the House of Commons is rude, then the next person who speaks is even ruder. If somebody in the House of Lords is rude, they go, "Oh, I'm so terribly sorry. I do want to withdraw that." It's a very different atmosphere. And Sue asked whether we're paid. There's not a salary like there is in the House of Commons, but there's a daily rate. And when I saw your question, I looked up, Sue, and actually the House of Lords sets its own daily rate. And I think that's a bit invidious. I think we should, in the House of Lords, do what the House of Commons does, which is have it set independently. I think it's a bit invidious, us choosing how
Isn't
much
it?
we're
Yeah,
paid
and
for a
it's
day. And the other
the money
question
thing's
is,
interesting. Oh, sorry, Harriet. You
sorry,
carry on.
the other thing is, why is Ruth, Sue asked, why is Ruth a baroness and not a lady? Well, she is a lady as well as a baroness, but actually I think neither Ruth nor I nor anybody should be lords or ladies. I think we should ban it. It ought to just be Ruth Davidson, HL, House of Lords, or Harriet
Oh,
Harman,
you love
HL.
this.
And all of this stuff, and I don't think we should have any bishops in there. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. And I certainly don't think, with all the airs and graces that there are around, that my children are entitled, and indeed your son is the
Mhm.
Honourable Finn. Well, I mean, that is ridiculous. We know he's adorable, but he should not be the Honourable. So I think it needs a bit of modernisation, but I'm not holding my breath.
Isn't the day rate like 300 quid? Is it 300
So there's
pounds?
two. So there's two. You can take a kind of half day rate or a full day rate. It's not called that. It's called something else. And I think
It's an allowance.
part-
It's supposed to compensate you for being in there instead of working. Because unlike MPs, whereas it's supposed to be your main full-time job, with the House of Lords, you're working at other things because there isn't a salary. So when you
Yeah.
go into the House of Lords, you get an allowance to
So how-
compensate you for
is
not
it-
working.
also you don't have any staff. So if you want to have, if you're one of the people that wants to be there a lot and sit on committees and do lots
Yeah.
of work, if you want to have any kind of secretarial support or any research
Yeah.
You
support,
pay that out of your
that's
allowance.
you pay that out of your allowance. Also, up until I think last year, you paid your accommodation out of your allowance. So, I mean, there were times when I started, particularly as you get close to summer, you know, a Premier Inn, a 15-20 minute walk from the House of Lords would cost more for a night than your daily rate was, just because of the time of year and because of London prices. So lots of stuff comes out of it.
Sue says, "Is it fun?" And when I answer yes, I begin to question myself and think, "Oh my God, I've really gone weird if I think being in the House of Lords is fun." But it's more relaxing. You're so under attack the whole time, and you've got such a weight of responsibility in the House of Commons. I mean, every day in my constituency, I would worry if I saw a bag of rubbish sitting out there, and I'd think I better contact the council because that somebody's going to trip over that bag of rubbish, or there's going to be a rat going into it, or if there's an accident, I'm wondering how quickly the ambulance has got there. You've got that weight on you the whole time. In the House of Lords, you don't have a constituency to worry about. So it feels quite carefree and fun.
But also it's collegiate. It's not adversarial in the same way. And actually the very fact that everybody talks to each other and is nice to each other, it's the equivalent of going to your work and having been, like I say, scratching and pulling scratching your eyes out and pulling each other's hair. You're now sitting down with linen, you know, linen napkins and cutlery. It's much more genteel than what I'm used to.
Next up, we've got a voice note from Claire, and I think she wants us all to reveal our ages for this one, and I've got no problem with that.
I'm Claire from the West Midlands. So I'm turning 25 soon, and I've been thinking about how the political environment that you grew up in has shaped you. I wonder how you all think about the political eras or political environments you grew up in and how they might have shaped you. Because I reckon that being a person in my 20s who expects a lot from the Labour Party is probably pretty common.
It's a very profound question, isn't
That's
it?
a
Pretty
very
deep, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
really thought-provoking. I think what characterised the era that I was brought up in is it was an age of hierarchy and an age of deference. And it was terrible. Women were subordinate to men. People who were working class were subordinate to people who were higher up the social ladder. And it was stultifying and unfair. And that shaped my political views because we wanted to toss aside all that prejudice and all that status and all that hierarchy and have a much more egalitarian country, which was more modern and which everybody could play their part in. So that era, that culture of deference and people knowing their place, I mean, even just remembering it now, it was horrific. And a lot has changed for the better in that.
I grew up at a time, as you did, when Labour were in opposition. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s when it was Thatcher, then into Blair, into the Blair government. So, like you, I was a young person where there was this massive political change. And I remember the Labour mantra of things can only get better. Do you remember? And it was great. What was it? Britpop. And it was the Gallagher brothers, and it was all about kind of cool Britannia, and Tony Blair was somehow the archetype of cool Britannia. I mean, go figure. How batshit were the 1990s, hey? Like Tony Blair was really cool. What I would say that was so different when I was growing up to now is just like Harriet talked about hierarchy. I grew up in a world where it was quite benign, that there was growth, there was free trade. I was studying social political science at university, and there was a political theorist or sociologist called Francis Fukuyama. And Francis Fukuyama had written a book called The End of History. And he basically was making the argument that liberal democracy had triumphed and flourished, and this was the benign world we would live in. And then fast forward to 20 something years on, and how different the world is. So when I look back on my youth and what was going on in politics at the time, in a way, the political mood of the country was sort of, for me, um, captured in the kind of global world, if you like. And I wonder a bit whether when you sort of talk about pessimism as well, is that you're in your 20s in a much harder period, I would say, than I had when I was in my 20s, and I could buy a house and I could get a cheap mortgage and I could live pretty well on my wages, which weren't that massive, and no one was, carrying out global trade wars. So I think you live in a very different era to when I did, and I actually look back on the 90s and Tony Blair's Cool Britannia, but I look back on that period and I just think, yeah, that was probably quite a nice time to grow up, because everything was pretty good back then.
So I'm about the same age as you. I think there's only 18 months between us, Beth. And I see some of what you're saying, but I have it slightly differently. I've been told by my best friend's mum, because I used to either she would come to my house or I would go to her house after school every kind of night. And I was born in the winter of discontent, so just before the Tories took power. I was born in November '78, and I remember I was 11 when Margaret Thatcher resigned. And I remember I was going to my pal Cheryl's house, and her mum tells a story of her saying, "Oh, the Prime Minister's resigned. John Major's the new Prime Minister." And I apparently turned around and said, "Can a man even be Prime Minister?" Because, we had the Queen was a never present. Margaret Thatcher had just been there for my whole life. This idea that men could even do that, so, and then, my goodness, haven't they done it ever since? With a few notable and some less notable interruptions. So that was different. And I think in terms of the global changes that I see in the world around me, it did feel, Beth, like there was more hope out there. It did feel like things were on this curve to getting better. What was it JFK said about the curve, on the curve of the universe, that it bends towards progress and kindness and all the rest of it. And you saw the Berlin Wall fall, and you saw Eastern Europe open up, and all of these old communist places made way to places where people that were democracies, where people could win. And it felt as if things were getting better. And even big decisions, even things like when Tony Blair brought in the doctrine of humanitarian interventionism. So you could go to war in someone else's country, you could cross their border, you could get involved in a war that was happening on their soil if you were doing it for the good guys. So in Kosovo, in Sierra Leone, you could stop someone else's civil war to try and fix things. This idea, this kind of conceit really, that liberal democracy knew all the answers and it was winning and it would never be pushed back, and things would always get better, and it would always get better for women, it would always get better for minorities, the world would get a safer, more purposeful, richer place, and we would all be better off. We'd all have more opportunities. But at the same time as that was going on in the world, for individuals of my age, so I'm 46, things were getting harder because you saw more freedom, but you traded off security for that freedom. So I and my generation didn't have the security that my parents had for being able to have a job for life, not even really a career for life. You could expect to have 3 or 4 different careers spanning maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 different workplaces or employers over that time. You didn't have the security of your pension. You suddenly couldn't afford houses. But what you traded it for was you could go and see the world. So there was this sense that you got something back. Even the things you lost, you got stuff back in return. And I think the difficulty I see for young people coming after me that are maybe 20 years younger than me, that are in your generation, Claire, is that actually you don't even really have that now because of climate change, because of, what the unconsidered costs of what we took from our era that is now being paid onto you. So the debts that you're having to repay as part of your taxes that we helped build up and generations before me, it's almost like you have less security, and now as you've got Trump's protectionism, you're now entering a period of less freedom as well. So I don't blame people for thinking there's a bleak outlook, but what I would say is there are still good people trying to make the best of it and make good changes, and you sound like somebody who might want to contribute. And if you do, come forward and speak to somebody. If you think the Labour Party is where your heart is, but that they're not doing the right things, go in and change them. Go and join them. Go and be a candidate.
Yeah.
Sort them out.
Okay, well, Ruth, I really liked that answer, and you took me back to my childhood and remembering the fall of the Berlin Wall and all these massive moments.
It was the night before my birthday. I remember it. And I remember the concert. I remember David Hasselhoff singing at it, and I remember like the people, just the joy on people's faces as they were hacking at the wall, with some with their hands, some with little hammers.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for sending that in.
Thank you for sticking with us. We are back, and before we go, we've got this email from Julie. Julie said, I just wanted to say that I'm very sympathetic towards Beth's apprehension about running a full marathon. Last August, on my 65th birthday, I committed to doing a skydive to raise funds for the Down Syndrome Association, and then I spent the next 7 months trying not to think about it. I did the skydive from 13,000 feet a couple of weeks ago, and it felt amazing. You can do it, Beth.
Oh, Julie.
Julie, what a champ!
Julie, what a champ. I will never be doing a skydive, though. But Julie, I admire you for that. I cannot think of anything I'd rather not do after running a marathon than doing a skydive. Anyone else?
I mean, I generally adhere to the fact that if you've got a perfectly good aircraft, why would you want to jump out of it? But I'm terrified of heights. Do you know the hardest thing? I used to be in the Territorial Army years and years and years ago, and the worst thing that I had was anything to do with heights. You had to do like Burma bridges, which are those like where you've got like a bit of string that you walk along and you've got string on either side, or trying to climb up the walls with the ropes and all that sort of stuff. I hated it. I hated all of that, and I had to really force myself to do it because I've got a genuine fear of heights. And yeah, even if you're strapped to a burly man that does this every day for a living, I still don't think I would want to jump out of an aircraft.
Would you ever do a bungee jump?
No.
Oh,
I had to
God.
come down off the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Beth. Somebody bought it as a present for my birthday. They bought me like a lovely little bridge walk, and you can go up and you can see all of Sydney, and I had to come down. Like it's a genuine fear that I have. And it's getting worse as I get older as well.
Gosh, I think it's having been in politics for so long to actually require me to do a bungee jump as well. I think a bridge too far, I'd say.
You couldn't do it.
No,
I wouldn't do it.
I've done lots of crazy things for politics. Like I've driven tanks. I've ridden a buffalo. What else have I done? Like they make you do stupid stuff. Especially if, as in my case, you were the leader of the third, or by some measures fourth party, and you just needed to make the papers so you could get your coat further up. You needed to be the picture. So I have done daft stuff that's actually terrifying, and I think you should do things that scare you every day. But I think there's a difference between things that scare you and that you can force yourself to do and that is part of personal growth and character building, and stuff that is absolutely mental and terrifies you so much you need new underwear. And skydiving 100% falls into the second of those camps for me.
So you are our heroine then, Julie, because you did it. You jumped out of the plane where these three vaguely brave ladies would not. So,
Never claimed to be brave.
I said vaguely brave.
Yeah, fair. What would you do, Harriet? What's the line for you? I mean, would it be climbing Kilimanjaro? Would it be abseiling down the fourth rail bridge? I mean, what would you consider doing?
I've done lots of kind of sort of stunt type of things when I was an MP, nestling down in a pigsty with an enormous great pig, going cheek to cheek, and doing a Chinese canoe thing on Chinese New Year, nearly falling out of it. I think I've that era of my life is over. I look forward to admiring you guys doing your dangerous things.
Well, look, we've got to wrap. That's it for today.
Also, remember that we are on YouTube, so you can also watch us every week, as well as listen to us. You just search for Electoral Dysfunction on YouTube.
And it is recess, so Parliament is out for Easter. What's everyone doing on their long weekends this weekend?
So I am taxi of mum, so I am spending a week running my son to and from tennis camp, and then in the afternoons we're going to... He's written a list of things that he wants to do. He wants to take one of his pals to East Links Family Park, which is like this kind of farm park thing that's about 5 miles from us, so that's grand. He wants to see a castle, and one that we've not been to, so I have to find a castle that we've not yet been to, because he likes castles. And he wants to go on a pony ride.
As usual, hanging out with the grandchildren, but I'm also working with my brilliant little team where we're finishing off my report for the Bar Council about bullying, harassment and sexual harassment in the barristers' profession. So that is going to be my Easter project.
And I am going to Centre Parks with my daughter, and I'm taking her and a number of her friends for her birthday. So wish me luck.
I was about to say, what did you do wrong in a previous life that you're taking a bunch of teenage girls to Centre Parks?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you survive, Beth.
I'll tell you what, I am committed to motherhood. Don't you forget it. I can't wait to get down the rapids. I'm really looking forward to it.